Hi, everybody, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to have this guest on my pod. I feel like of all the people in the whole world I want to talk to you today, it is Leslie. Like I have been almost jonesing for this. I have been craving this recording for the last couple of weeks. True story. I We're going to be talking all about we're just going to be spending time with Leslie, having a conversation. But for those who don't know, first of all, where do you live? What are you doing? What is going on here? Why do you not know? I'm just gonna read because I'm trying to pretend to be a professional podcaster. I'm gonna read a very brief intro into who Leslie is, a passionate, multi-certified anti-diet education, recovery, and wellness practitioner, yes, who has turned her personal struggle into a mission to help others heal and reclaim their power with a unique blend of wit, empathy, and a social justice lens, which is very important. She brings her own experience to the table to create a truly transformative approach to wellness. And if you are not following on Instagram, first of all, first thing, just press pause, go to the show notes, click the button, follow, and then come back to the podcast because otherwise you might forget. But I love all of your posts. I love your Instagram posts. They make me so intensely happy because they just bring joy. They just bring joy to whatever you're doing in the day. If you're scrolling and I see your face, and then I see like either like you doing some joyful movement, and it just makes my day. Anyway, at Leslie Jordan Wellness, her mission is to empower individuals in their journey towards holistic wellness by providing compassionate guidance, evidence-based anti-diet education, and culturally, again, very important, relevant support. She is dedicated to helping clients reconnect with their inner wisdom, challenge oppressive systems, and cultivate a nurturing relationship with their bodies and themselves. Now that I have like introduced you by reading from your website and made things super awkward, I just want to say hi.
It is awkward. Hi, though. I've also been jonesing for this. Like, I'm just always, you know me, leaving these voice notes for you. Just always wanting to chat it up with you. So thank you first for having me. And yes, it is awkward to hear that read about yourself, but
Isn't
it
it?
is.
It's so horrible. I don't know why we do this. And then why am I copying? Maybe I shouldn't do it, but then I just don't want to be impolite and like not introduce. But
No.
honestly, I've been following Leslie now for I think since I got onto social media. I think perhaps one of the first ever follows, and I love the fact that nowadays I'm noticing more and more people will say they'll be like, oh, there's this really great person. I'm like, yeah, I know who you're talking about. Like, please, please, like I wouldn't be following.
Please.
But you are one of the main people on the internet for me. Honestly, I only follow like a handful of people. You are right at the top of my list, and I love you.
I
And
love you too. Oh
I
my
would,
goodness.
and we do leave each other little voice notes all the time. I would love to just hear about your personal, because you talk about like how this is a personal journey for you. This is not learned experience. This is lived experience, and I would love to know a little bit about that journey and how you got to where you are today.
Oh, well, I have been in recovery for a binge eating disorder, as it's now called. Of course, when I first got treatment for binge eating disorder, it wasn't called that. It was compulsive overeating, and it had not yet. I know, like I think they thought, okay, we have anorexia and bulimia, and what's the most horrible name we can give this other thing that we see happening? That's what it was before even it was in the DSM. Had I started receiving treatment and going to not that great of a therapy for it, as a matter of fact, because even still now there's that stigma with binge eating, like compulsive overeating. Like, yeah, no, you just need to stop eating, right? Like, yeah, that's the whole problem, is that you eat too much, and yeah, you need to just not eat as much, right? Like there's still that undercurrent of that type of stigma attached to that particular um eating disorder, and it's so much more than that. And it's also not just, it's not even about the food. Like, that's what it is. It's like, and for me, of course, through therapy and just learning and growing and healing, really going back to that root of feeling like I was too much as a Black girl when I was in high school, and really taking on the subtle and not so subtle messaging around the unacceptability of my body, and really trying to figure out how I could cope. I had great parents who just were oblivious to eating disorders. I mean, like, I think at that time, a lot of Black families weren't, like, that wasn't something that was presented to Black families and probably other families of color. Like, that was something you could struggle with. Like, it was very much present. I remember watching the Karen Carpenter story as a kid, and eating disorders were very much something that, the swag,
Mhm.
single white affluent girls and women got. Like, so as a Black person, that you struggling with something else, like, that wasn't it. But that is certainly how it manifested. I just didn't have coping skills, and talking about how I felt racially assaulted and attacked to parents who had actually lived through segregation. um what I was going through to them, saying like, girl, you're gonna be okay. Like, suck it up. Like, it wasn't that they didn't care, just to them, like, yeah, my dad's like, yeah, I was a veteran and was shot at when I came back from Vietnam. Like, girl, what are they doing to you? So even though it's very much to me, it just didn't quite seemed the same, as heavy to my parents. And so the very little was done. So I just internalized it, right? I just bottled it all up, swallowed it down, and what came out was an eating disorder. As I really struggled to fit into the very white spaces of academia that I was in, and so forth and so on, until finally one day a friend of mine said, hey, they're starting this program, why don't you try it? It's free, it's for to get you some help. And that's how I got into the recovery space and into recovery for myself. And that experience then informed my education. I added on a master's of public health onto my master's of business, because I was just like, oh, other people need to know that, hey, it's not you. It's not just you, it's these systems. And really starting to parse out what external validation and external pressures, and how people were experiencing and coping with these things when they didn't have coping skills, because we're not taught that we need to cope against society. uh we're taught that this is just, hey, you should be trying to fit in. Like, that's
Yeah.
what we're taught. So
Um, okay, for those of you watching on YouTube, you will have seen my face. I made a face because I have never heard the word compulsive overeating disorder. Like, that is not something that's ever been in my lexicon. I think perhaps there was a real ignorance when I first trained in medical school about eating disorders. It's not something we learned. You had to go and study psychiatry and be in psychiatry for some time to understand what went beyond anorexia and bulimia. But by the time I was aware, it was called binge eating disorder. So
yeah,
forgive my like look of absolute shock and horror. Thank goodness I wasn't drinking water or something, because I would have spat it out. You said so much in there. I have been writing notes. My favorite part was I just decided to add on a master's of public health to my master's in business. As you do. I just decided to add it on.
yeah,
See, this is how you know when people are superhuman, when they're just like, I'll just do a master's of public health. That's fantastic. Um, uh, you said something about being too much. And I hear this a lot, especially from Black women, and other people of color actually, that we're already a lot for people to handle because we live in this extremely white supremacist, colonialist, imperialist society that prioritizes whiteness at all costs and oppresses everyone else. So I'm already sticking out, especially I imagine when like it's not even something you can hide. Like it is literally on your face and in your hair. And like, I am Black. And so I guess that's already for some people too much. And then to add in that kind of, but I'm bigger than people just because that's naturally how I am. And I think
yeah,
especially people of African descent just have certain genetics that are passed on, plus the transgenerational trauma and all of the other stuff that's passed on. Like, it's not unusual for a Black person to be bigger and maybe even mature earlier as well. So I imagine that must have been really hard, and I can really understand that along with the racial microaggressions and the kind of maybe, I don't know if I've got this quite right, but feeling like, well, my parents had it so much harder, and so how can I complain? Like,
right,
at least the KKK are not showing up at my door, but that doesn't
correct.
mean that life is any easier. It's just different. It's still the
Yeah,
same anti-black racism just repackaged in a
Yes.
different container. So I mean, I'm sad that you went through all of that stuff. I am amazed that you then were able to take that and turn it into such a joyful, because I just get so much joy from you. Um, and I love that you're talking about, well, binge eating disorder. Even that, I don't know about you, but I find that to be an extremely offensive, and also I don't think anybody really understands binge eating disorder properly. Like it's a restrictive disorder. I don't care what anyone
Very.
says. It's a
Yes.
restrictive
Very.
disorder.
Yeah. It's based in restriction. Correct.
It's basically restriction,
Yes.
absolutely. And also the fact that Black people have always and continue to be excluded from the eating disorder conversation, community, recovery. It's like you said, I mean, we think of a thin white person when we think of an eating disorder. We never think of a fat person. But even if we do think of a fat person, we don't think of a fat Black person. Like
No,
that's
and when we do, the fatness is the problem. So
Mhm.
like any other thing leading up to like anything else is backseat, like irrelevant. Like if you're talking about a fat person and eating disorders, the the idea is that the eating disorder has led them to be fat. Like the
Mhm.
fatness itself is the eating disorder, and I think that's even why to comment on what you said about why binge eating disorder has that name binge eating, because that's the focus of
Mhm.
treatment is to stop the binge eating, but
Yeah.
we're just now really getting to a place where we're talking about the restriction that leads to the binge eating. It's not
Mhm.
just me sitting up here thinking, oh, I'm just going to eat, 2 pans of lasagna and blah, blah, blah. That's not what it is. It's the restriction that I've done to shrink my body. And for me specifically, I was, didn't really get to be a plus size person until much later in life, like after having kids, like growing up, but I was always still too much. I was too Black. I was too outspoken. I was too this. So what can I control? Well, I cannot fade my Blackness, despite Michael Jackson's pioneering efforts. I'm still going to be Black. I'm still going to have this natural hair. I'm going to be outspoken. It's just the way my mind works, and I'm going to speak on it. So where can I shrink? Oh, I can potentially shrink my size. And then I will seem less assuming. Then I will seem or appear to be less loud, less outspoken, less of a threat, less aggressive, like all the stereotypes that they attribute to Black women. Like I'm trying to be as less, as little, downsides everything as much as I possibly can. So
Mm.
yeah,
Right.
so that's yeah.
And I think, I mean, I guess like when I hear Black women talking about the stereotypes that they have to fight so hard or not, either fight or just like kind of accept, whether it's at the angry Black woman or it's kind of like the Sapphic, the kind of like the Jezebel, or whether it's the mammy figure, like whatever it is, like fatness plays a role in that, right? I guess like, you have this picture, this horrible racial stereotype that comes from Hollywood and all sorts of places. And I guess, yeah, it's a certain look, maybe. Is that fair to say? It's a certain look. So if I, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that it's definitely fair to say if you look a certain way, then you're expected to have a certain persona, right? Like you're one of you're just because of how commercialized and put into the media these stereotypes have just been underwritten, and by no means is non-Black cinema or Hollywood, for example, the only people writing in these stereotypes. Like these
Right.
stereotypes have just become a part of the culture, like we're all aware of them, and honestly they generate money. Like it's really hard even to get Black artists away from these stereotypes because they're familiar to us, right? They may not be, that's not what we think, but they are definitely familiar, and familiarity is, people will put up with a lot if they're familiar with it, right?
Right.
Um, and so I think that's one of the things that I see a lot of, and even for me, how these same stereotypes have worked their way into eating disorder treatment. Like there are certain approaches if the person is going to be perceived as that Jezebel type, very
Mhm.
sexually hypersexual is what I want to say, because it's
Yes,
not
yeah.
necessarily about promiscuity. you know, as an
Yeah,
opposite to chastity, right? As an
sure.
opposite to the puritanical beliefs and values we've inherited. But just, you know, knowing who she is. And then also the welfare queen, that's another stereotype.
Mm.
So if she's ever struggled with food insecurity or coming from a low income, that is automatically at play. Um, yeah, the mammy figure is a less aggressive figure, afforded to fuller figured individuals and older women. A lot of times you see
Mhm.
that angry black woman. Of course, she's usually heavier, and she's loud and angry, like there's nothing to be angry about. um but but I digress. You know, so we see these over, and not just in black women. I mean, there are Asian counterparts. There's the dragon lady, there's the very docile older Asian woman. You know, there's we see them in Latinx communities as that mother figure, you know, very um cooking for other men type figure in the Latin culture. There's also, you know, more sexually provocative or evocative woman in those cultures. So a lot of these themes are repetitive across cultures because it's been a way for white supremacy culture to oppress those personalities, right? We set you up with the stereotype, and then we oppress it, right? So it happens to people of color regardless of what color and where you are. You know, like these are recurrent themes. And um not only are they dehumanizing, but they shrink a whole culture down and distill it down to just a few things that they think they know how to deal with. So that's why they're so prevalent, and just will probably never go away because it's easier to put someone in a box that, you know, that we
Mm.
already know what it is, or, you know, and we know how to treat you better because you're in this body that you're screwing up, so we know that you're this type of person, and so we have these treatment protocols, or we have these steps for that, right? So
And it leans so much into like medical paternalism, you know, this idea that like, oh, I can put you in a box, I can stereotype you, make assumptions and judgments about you, and then that will absolutely dictate how I treat you and how I manage your eating disorder. Which
right.
I imagine is like, I mean, I can't put myself in that position. I've only ever been in the position of the doctor, but I hear my colleagues talking about people. And it disgusts me how like, it's whatever you're thinking, it's probably worse. I think sometimes doctors are the worst perpetrators of these types, you know, these very explicit forms of racism, and very
Mhm.
explicit. Forget the implicit racism, which impacts all of us, myself included, but these are
Correct.
very explicit forms of racism which have no business. Like we should have addressed these like there should be like you know a rule that if you're caught doing that, then you're out. Like you know because
Yeah.
it's basic, but it's not. This is not where I saw this conversation going. But I'm so glad that we talked about it because it's so important, and I'm sure it's going to keep coming up. I have a few questions for you. I've been thinking a lot about January and just how. You know, even though I curate all my social media feeds and I'm very, very careful about what I watch and what I don't watch, in January, I'm inundated with diet culture bullshit. I have
Yep.
there's a famous British rapper who is rapping to a Slim Fast commercial, which makes me really mad because he's you know he's larger. I don't even know if I have to describe him as fat, but he's a larger black man who's famous here in the UK. He's a British born rapper, and he's I'm just like, no, I got no problem with you taking that money. I'm just upset because it's Slim Fast. I wouldn't care what it was. It's just Slim Fast. I feel sad that they've stereotyped him to do it because he, you know, and there's all this medical weight loss bullshit, and there is the Weight Watchers and the Noom, and then there's just all this really offensive stuff. But I'm noticing more and more that diets are rebranding themselves because diet's a bad word now. People are saying no to diet, so they're rebranding themselves as lifestyle changes. And as someone who is just so very aware of all of that stuff because of your history of an eating disorder, I wonder what you think about that. I wonder what your thoughts are about diets versus lifestyle changes.
Oh my. So obviously we're being in the US and same thing. I mean, Weight Watchers use a very popular rapper, heavy, a heavier guy. I mean, I probably would say he called himself fat. I mean, like just as a neutral descriptor.
Mm.
Lost some weight. Well, I mean, he's just skinning and grinning in those Weight Watchers commercials. DJ Khaled. I don't mind saying who it was here. So it was DJ Khaled. Right. So I'm just like, it was him. And so yeah, the messaging here is really, prevalent and pressure, and especially with weight loss injectables now. And so they're using, so it's a double-edged sword here. So yes, we see a lot of that rebranding as a lifestyle change has been happening in the US for quite some time. And and inevitably I get someone who will be like, well, I just want to make this, I want to make low carb my lifestyle. And I'm just like, if it's not sustainable, like if you're really going to have to change everything about the way you do, it's not going to be sustainable. And it's just a diet. Like it's just something you're going to do for a little while. Because I just think for me, because I tried them all, right? Like I'm not bashing anyone who's tried them. I'm talking about I've tried them. Like from my own personal experience. Slim Fast is actually one I actually never have tried with the shakes because I like to chew my food. Like I'm
Mm.
sorry, but I have tried Shakeology with like the Beachbody, you name it. I
Yeah.
so yeah, they're not sustainable because too much of what you like to eat, and especially for people of color who are literally having to just completely forego a lot of their cultural foods, traditional foods. Yeah, they're just not sustainable. And if it's not sustainable, then to me it's a diet. Like you can add in vegetables to every meal and do that across your lifespan, right? That is a lifestyle change. You can, and I think it's a lot easier to add in some things before you just take away so much. And all of them want you to take away. Oh, that noom is one of the worst. Um, uh, yeah, if you've ever just done the quiz for, shits and giggles and try to do that, and then everything that you want to eat is a red food. And then at
Mm.
the end of the day, no matter what you've put in as your goals or whatever, you're going to be eating about 1,200 calories as an adult, which is insufficient. Um, so, yeah, the messaging is loud and clear. And I think this year, with the weight loss injectables, I just think that it's so much more dangerous. And of course, we also have the American Academy of Pediatrics signing, like giving the okay to restrict kids' food as well. So it's not just about adults here anymore. It's about, oh no, put your 8-year-old on that diet. Or, or yeah, restrict their food. Like we see so much of that messaging as well here in the United States. It's horrible. And um but boy, do they have it down. Like the marketing dollars that are behind them, they know how to hit you right in the shame and in the guilt. And with, I think the language around the weight loss injectables has really made it be like, basically, hey, there's no reason for you to be fat. Like, you know, take these weight loss injectables. Don't worry about your liver or kidneys because we're not going to tell you about what the studies say about that. We're just going to talk about how you can lose this weight up to 24
Mm.
months. We stop
Mm.
studying once people start regaining the weight.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah.
we don't want to talk
Don't
about that.
worry.
But for right
Mm.
now,
Mm.
you can lose this weight. And the humanity that's extended to people that are in smaller bodies versus the dehumanization of people in larger bodies makes that look very attractive.
Yeah, right. It's such an interesting thing. I don't know if you find this, but when I'm talking to clients, I get very angry at the diet industry. I get very angry at the people profiting from weight loss. I get very angry with the messaging and the medical profession and all of that stuff. And also, I totally understand why you want to make yourself smaller because, as you state,
Correct.
who wants to be dehumanized? Who wants to be
Correct.
who wants to be double taxed? Like
Right.
I don't, you don't, why would we? And so I have endless compassion for fat people who
Yeah.
are like, but I want to lose weight. I have endless compassion. I will never judge you. I will never feel, make you feel guilty. But I swear, if you work for the weight loss industry,
Yeah.
I have zero time for you. I have zero compassion. Zero. Yeah.
Zero, because I know that diet culture is just born out of body hierarchies, and
Yes.
that body hierarchies is just one arm of white supremacy culture. So like I'm very clear about what it is. So
Yeah.
I'm very angry, and I'm angry that there's just so much money that they have, because to throw behind it, right? Because they are preying upon your insecurities. They are cheerfully taking your
Mhm.
insecurities to the bank, because if it's not just weight loss, now it's the red light machines to magically whisk away wrinkles, and so no matter what, you're always going to be dissatisfied if you're listening to them. It
Right.
doesn't matter. You're going to lose the weight, then you're going to have excess skin, then you're going to need surgery, then you're going to have wrinkles, and then you're going to age, then you need a breast augmentation, and you need a tummy tuck, and you need lift, and you need to tan, but don't tan too much because then you have cancer, and then you need this, and then you need hair extensions, and then like it's always something if you
Hmm.
listen to them, and they're all related. Like all these companies are in cahoots against us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the medical industrial complex, and part of that medical complex is this subset of health and beauty, right? That is a subset of that medical complex. And yeah, and they mean you no good. Like they really don't. Like they could care less, because it's always going to be your fault. Their products never fail. You are somehow the failure for just existing in a human body. So yeah,
Right. And
it's
I love the
frustrating.
term,
It's like I could burn them down.
I love the term you use, body hierarchies. That is just spot on, hits the nail on the head. And I want to segue a little bit into body hierarchies and also food hierarchies. And I'm sure you must have opinions about clean food versus ultra processed food. Again, it's not a diet, it's clean eating. I wonder what you think about that. Let it rip.
Marketing. It's
Mm,
all marketing. And I know that there are people that are like, no, when I went to yeah, sure, there are some chemicals, obviously, right, that are less great for us than other chemicals. Like I think that goes without saying. But it's only ultra processed foods when it's what people who struggle economically are eating. It's McDonald's or KFC. It's not
mm.
that it's not beyond meat. How much processing did that plant go through to have blood like feet? Like that's
Yeah.
ultra processed, but no one's talking about that, or that
Mm-mm.
or that protein bar, that protein shake or mix, right? Those are also extremely ultra processed foods. But again, it's all about marketing. It's all about hitting people. I feel like it's just such shame based marketing right there, hitting you in ways that make you feel like you have something to be guilty about or shameful about. And that's where they are using these emotional marketing tactics. Because yeah, clean food, sure, I would like to eat less pesticides, but no one's talking about why food is so expensive to begin with. Or they're not talking about all the corporations that own our farmland, and they're putting and then market against the chemicals, right? Like they're not talking about the big picture. Everyone is so hyper focused on such small pictures that they don't realize that all of these are threads that are supporting body hierarchies and white supremacy culture, like, and capitalism, right? Like they're all together. Like they are together. And when you try to unravel one string, the rest of them kind of like recoil to push back against what you're unraveling. Like it's all marketing, because it's all about certain people making money
Mm.
in the end. It's If it was about health, I can only speak to the US on this. If it was about health and food, like we throw away enough food in the US to feed everybody for free.
Sure.
And when I say that, I don't mean just like here's your little wartime breadline rations. I mean you could eat steak, shrimp, whatever you want, plant-based, whatever, for free in this country with all the food that we throw away. So why isn't it free? It's because someone is not making money. So like when I think about if it's really good for you, like you just have to be able to eat. I don't care. I am a coach that will tell you fed is best. I don't think anybody going
Mm.
hungry. So I don't care what it is. If you're eating McDonald's, is that what I want to see you eat all the time for every single meal? Maybe not from a nutrition standpoint, but from a fed standpoint, sure.
Right.
Like if that's all we got right now, we're gonna start there. We're going to get
Mhm.
fed and then we're going to work some other things, right? Because I know that they all go together. But yeah, it's same here. It's insane. Clean marketing. Again, it's all shame based. No, you should be making better food choices. Your choices are all up to you. No, they're not, because my wages aren't all up to me. What grocery stores in America carry are not up to me. They're up to the government because of practices like redlining and keeping certain fresh, easy to access whole foods away from certain communities. Like there is so much more at stake, not just food deserts, but actual food apartheid systems, like intentionally making it difficult for certain communities to access fresh foods that have a higher nutrient value than other, like a more dense nutrient value. Like that is also happening, and that's not anyone else's fault. But the marketing makes it sound like, oh yeah, no, especially now with the change of administration, and this fool that they're going to put in office as the security or Secretary of Health and Human Services. Make America Healthy Again, the MAHA is all about attacking ultra processed food and vaccines, by the way. So you
Right.
see US with an outbreak of polio, like you know who's to blame.
Hmm. But first of all, something you said, I need to make it very clear to everyone who's listening. I am getting very increasingly frustrated with people who talk about capitalism without talking about racism. I don't think it's possible. All forms of capitalism are also racist, are independent and are underpinned by racism, right? So I just want to make it clear that what is happening in the food industry is underpinned by anti-black racism and racism, but specifically anti-black racism. And I think when people think about unclean food, the again, like if you close your eyes and you visualize it, you're going to be thinking about foods that we associate with black culture, with black community, with black, with black home cooking as well, which I always think like, well, go on, what were you going to say?
I
Yeah.
was just gonna say, well, yeah, that's why I always put capitalism up there with white supremacy culture. They're holding hands. They're working
Mm,
together. Like I
mhm.
don't think we would have capitalism in the way that we have it if we didn't have racism.
Sure. For sure not.
Because capitalism, the idea is that it's free market and everyone can participate equally. Capitalism is not like that at all. Not everyone can participate equally because of racism. Like
Yeah.
I need a shirt that just says because of racism. Like that's it. Like when you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's like, oh, someone asked me a question, I can just point to my shirt. Like because and it sounds like a broken record, but it really is the truth of the matter of how the ideal that people with white bodies and Eurocentric features are at the top and want to remain at the top. Like here here in the US, like it was just a clip that surfaced right after Trump won the election, and it's this white guy who I don't know who he is, but he was just talking about he voted for him so that white people could slow down the dispossession of their country
Yeah, I
because it's
read that.
their country, because they didn't
Yeah.
steal it or steal some people to build it up. That's not what
Mm-mm.
happened at all. Like this idea that we're white, we should be on top. Like that's what I'm talking about, and that underpins because that ideology has affected what 90% of the countries on this planet. Like like organized as the way we see them organized now. Like that is something that is real and continues to drive decision making and marketing, all that support. Like capitalism supports white body supremacy. Like that's why it is the way it is, to keep that. So yes, you're exactly right. You can't talk about it without knowing that that's the crux of why we're seeing it the way we're seeing it.
So to summarize, when we're talking about lifestyle changes and the rebranding of diets and ultra-processed food and clean eating, as Leslie says, because racism. And it really is. And if you just pull at any one of those threads, even if you look back historically in terms of the commodification of food, like once food was simply there to feed people and nourish people, and now is there to make a very small group of people very, very, very rich. Like if you look at who's manufacturing food, it's only a few companies, right? Like there's like five or six that just own everything.
And
And
Bill Gates is one of the biggest ones of like owners of farmland. Like it's so funny. And food. That's the one thing, right? Like humans all have in common, right?
yes,
We can talk about alcoholism and stopping alcohol, but you don't need alcohol to live. Everybody needs food to live. Every single person. So
yeah.
this is actually how the conquerors, the colonialists, were so efficient at displacing and or effectively driving genocide of First Nations and original peoples in different places, they attacked the food systems. That was the
Mm,
first thing. That was one of the first thing that the Spaniards came when they came in behind Christopher Columbus. That was one of the first things they did was bring over animals that weren't native to this land and use the native food sources for the natives as food sources for their animals
oh,
so that
wow.
these animals that didn't have any natural predators over here were able to reproduce and just run rampant and damage your food system so much. And now you're stuck taking what they're handing you as food, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yes. Um, I, I wonder when, like, when people come to you on a practical level, if somebody comes to you and they're like, I heard about this, or I read about this, or my second cousin 3 times removed, like, neighbor is doing this cleanse or whatever. Are there sort of like red flags or things that that you hear and you're like, no, that doesn't sound right? That maybe you can kind of like share with us because you said not sustainable, right? You said that was one of your big things. If you can't sustain it, don't do it. But are there any others that you go,
But you
oh,
just said one of them, cleanse. I hate this time of year. Oh my gosh, do not tell me about another cleanse.
mm-mm,
Do not use the word detox anywhere
detox.
near me. Like,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
when you tell me those things, um, or elimination, if you're gonna say you're gonna do something with some elimination and they're not based on actual verified like allergies, or I just feel like I need to eliminate all processed sugar. My eyes. Right? Like when when you tell me something like that, I'm already just like, what do you want from me? Like like really what do you want from me? Do you want me to validate that this nonsense is going to help you, or are
Mhm.
you asking for real help? Like because I just almost all my work, no matter what we are going to work, part of my work now almost always includes the deconstruction of systems of oppression and how they are affecting you right now. Like I do assessments and inventories with my clients about how they think about their bodies, about how they think about their identities, about how they think about food, all of this, regardless of the work we're going to do. So we can really do that. I think the deep dive is to align your values um, with what you're doing because that's going to be sustainable because that's going to be who you actually are. And
Yes.
your beliefs can be influenced by external, sources. So we look at the values and are they aligned with the beliefs and where these beliefs come from. We do a lot of this work, a lot of this work over meals, over snacks, over movements, over coaching exercises. We do a lot of that work. And I have yet to have a client who has said, yeah, no, really, no, I 100% believe that thinness is a proxy for health. I believe that thinness is a proxy for happiness. I believe that, like, once you really deconstruct all that, no one, none of the people I work with believe that. And and I'm glad. So I'm happy for them to come to me because I find that I really find good people who have just been sold the same garbage that all of us have been sold. We're all in the society. It's just like what do they say? You can't see the forest for the trees. Well, so we look at every single tree. Like
Mm.
that's my work. Let's look at this tree. Let's look at this tree. And then we see things for what they really are. Because I know and once you see it, you can't unsee it.
It's so true. Eyes open, you cannot close your eyes again. That's it, it's done.
You cannot go back. And then yeah, you see it all the time and everywhere because it's everywhere.
Although I will say, using your amazing tree analogy, I do think that as time goes by, we find another tree and we're like, "Oh, I didn't know you were there. Hang on a second. You've just shown yourself to me. I didn't realize. I thought I had it, and now I think we come across more and more. But once you see it, that's it. You can't unsee it. One of the things I had was when I got my diabetes diagnosis. All of a sudden, so I know you know a lot about diabetes, but when I got my diabetes diagnosis, I wasn't changing the way I ate to lose weight. I thought I was fine. I was changing the way I ate for my blood sugar. That's completely different, except for it was exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
And
The
then
stigma around diabetes marketing. Oh my, and it's to me, it's one of the ah.
I needed to hear that scream. Thank you very much. I might just record that back.
Because I know what you know, and you know the truth is pre-diabetes is just like obesity, right? It
Mhm.
is another way for the medical people to pathologize something that was going to happen anyway. Yeah, sure, there are some people that are on that borderline and do some things and can kind of keep things on an even keel, but we both know the truth of the matter. And even if they only keep it for even keel for so long, right? If your pancreas is not going to produce sufficient insulin, it's not going to produce sufficient insulin, whether that happens at age 30 or age 60, right? And there shouldn't be any stigma until no one says boo when something else in your body, if your gallbladder stops working, no one gives you any grief about that. Or, oh no, you need a pacemaker. No one gives you any grief about your heart. But damn it, if it's that pancreas.
Um, it is very stigmatized, right? I hear you, and
Very stigmatized. It preventable. Yeah.
it's not preventable. Do you know, actually, you said maybe between 30 and 60. I want you to know that the data shows that even if you can prevent it, it's about a year and a half max. A year
Yeah,
and a
but
half.
but my point is, if you're gonna have it, you're gonna have it, and you shouldn't be stigmatized about it. We should be talking really about how to help you,
Yep.
you know,
Not
manage the effects of having a chronic illness.
right. And not diet, because that's obviously gonna make it worse. I'm gonna like I really like I want to get to the bit where we talk about how people can work with you, but before we do, I'm just gonna drop a little bumps and just step away and see what happens. Is exercise ever a bad idea? Boom.
So, that's a good
Told
one.
you, I
Actually,
just
so I would say if you're doing it for the right reasons, then no. Like I think everyone can benefit from movement. Everyone, if whether you're bedridden and you're just practicing deep breathing, or if you're up like me shaking that moneymaker, you can benefit from movement. What I think is dangerous is the motivations behind it and your relationship with it. I think there are some people who are in a safe space to do it without going overboard. There are people who are recovering from other things that maybe movement isn't the right thing at this time. But I'm a mover, and I just think that we're these bodies are cool no matter what the abilities are. There's something cool about your body, and and we're made to be in motion. Yeah. So yes.
See, I just want everyone to hear that actually the answer was perfect because you immediately switched from exercise to movement and you talked about the motivation behind it. And I love that you said like even deep breathing. This is somebody who is literally shaking your moneymaker on on Instagram. That's all I see. You doing all these incredible dances and having fun. And it's really I don't want to say high impact, but it's high energy. It feels like fun,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Definitely high energy over impact.
Right. And I there have been times where for whatever reasons, whether it's something to do with neurodivergence, whether it's I don't know, I don't even want to try and find the reason or explanation, but
Right.
there have been times when like that high energy has really put me off. There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't feel like I want to or can access those spaces. And I wonder what you would say to me if I said to you, but I don't want to dance. Like I sometimes I really want to dance, but sometimes I don't want to dance. Then what do I do? Am I a bad person?
When you don't want to dance, you don't dance.
Mm.
And I just think that yeah, movement has to come from a place where you're gonna get some kind of benefit from it. Like when it's for like my dad always said, if it don't fit, don't force it. Like that is that is the thing. Maybe just rolling on the floor back and forth or just laying there. And I will tell anybody, stillness is a part of my movement practice. Because sometimes you have to just be still and listen and to your body's cues and what you really need in that moment. So just saying.
I'm writing that down. Stillness is a part of my movement practice. That was a light bulb moment for me. Thank you. Thank you. If people are listening and just like, in the UK we have a saying, I like the cut of their jib. I don't know if that's I'm really like they're feeling it. They're like, I really want to work with Leslie. How can they work with you? What can they do with you? Like I want to know how people can, yeah.
I am Austin, Texas local and worldwide via the interwebs, right?
Mhm.
So if you want to work with me, I'm literally a DM away. Some of my favorite people that I admire, like you, are in the UK. But if you want to work with me, yeah, I'm just a DM away. I do virtual movement sessions with clients. I do kind of like this coaching, so to speak, kind of like partnering. Like I always think of myself as a thought and value partner
Mm.
with my clients, that we're just gonna talk and we're gonna deconstruct and we're gonna unlearn and we're gonna learn. And I'm also doing the same thing, like you said. I love, like, yeah, sometimes a tree, I'm like, you almost had me. Like I'm constantly learning and opening my eyes and reading, and the same thing, right? Because there's always such something new. There's a new perspective, there's a new edge. And so we kind of just, I do that work with my clients more as an accountability and thought partner. I don't have the answers for your life. Like that's the beauty. I am all about giving you the tools that you need to powerfully and be empowered to take, to access your autonomy in every aspect of your life. So but we are gonna kick diet culture and racism in the nuts. Like we are gonna do that together. Like that,
Yes.
we are gonna do that. But other than that, we work on, and I just help you meet your goals, like help you suss them out, what you really want your life to be like, so that I'm coaching you towards liberation. And liberation for each of my clients looks different, right? This is liberation for one, this is liberation for another. And that's what I'm trying to coach you towards, your best liberated life.
That's amazing. And I just need to say, first of all, like just because who wouldn't want to work with you? It's more fun. Like you want to work with someone that you can just get on with and that you can trust. And as I said, there's a very big difference between learned and lived experience, a huge one. And there's an authenticity. And anyone who's ever around you for more than 3 minutes can feel it just in their bones. Like there is an authenticity here. I love what you said about being a thought and value partner. Like that's really amazing. And I cannot stress this enough, people. If you're fat or you're in any marginalized or oppressed body, really, and you're struggling
Right.
with food and exercise and diet culture and wellness culture and health and all that stuff, I understand that I mean, there's lots of people in this area that have a lot of things, and some of them look really shiny and sparkly and let's face it, thin and white and pretty, and they are, I suppose, can be appealing. You think that's what health and wellness coach looks like, but that is the opposite of what a health and wellness coach. I'm not saying that if you're thin and white pretty, you can't be a health and wellness coach. Don't get me wrong, but for me, you want to find yourself someone who has been in the trenches with you, who knows what it feels like, and actually is exploring things through a social justice lens. Because if without that part, I just feel like you're only going to get to a certain place. You might learn about diet culture and this, that, and the other, but you will hit a wall and you will not be able to go any further. If you really want to have transformation, then I, the fat doctor, endorse Leslie Jordan Garcia. No, seriously, I mean, get yourself a fat black, woman health and wellness sort of coach, thought and value partner people. Why would you want to settle for anything less? Especially one who's just like, yeah, I just added a Master of Public Health into my business masters. Yeah, I just added it in because I can. You're amazing. I love you so much. I'm so grateful for having this conversation with you. I'm obviously going to invite you back over and over again because I think you have
I
so
know.
much
I'll
to say.
be leaving you some love notes.
Yeah, and like
Love.
we have a lot of work to do over the next 4 years, right? So
Yes.
we'll be back. I'm gonna press
All the
record.
work.
Don't go away. Okay. Uh